All right, thank you. Sorry for that. All right, let me continue. Let me start over. I don't know where I dropped off, but I will start from here. We have some housekeeping. I'll be using this technology called Slido.com. You can open this in your browser or also on your phone, and you can also ask your questions on the right inside of Think by now. I see that you're familiar with it. So with that, let me just go here. This is the topics we'll be discussing. Like, why is integration truly important for, and we'll be exploring PLM and ERP integrations today, and how to integrate them, what are the options, and then what is our maturity process, right, on how to look at PLM to ERP integration. With that, I was starting here where I was talking about the top banner, which are the states, right? This is how we either go from idea to the shipped product. So it goes through many states, the life cycle states. So from planning to conceptual design to full detailed design, getting the products manufactured in the manufacturing department or the production house, and then getting packaged and shipped out of the door. Right? In doing so, we have many different systems that have to interact. So we have a CPQ system where we do the configure price quote that has to send the order details, while engineers, actually the engineering department works in their CAD authoring tools, and they manage all that information in PLM, right? So they, depending on your business model, whether you're an engineering to order or an assemble to stock kind of business model, the engineering department may already have a lot of the sub-assemblies or product modules already defined, and then need to only work on specific areas of the product line, product bill of material, right? That needs to be ordered for the engineered for the order. And they compile all of that information. In some cases, there's some software requirements or systems engineering that happens, and that has to be coupled with your bill of material, right, for traceability purposes and all that, before all of this information is now sent over to the ERP, right, where work happens on orchestrating on the production scheduling and manufacturing processes itself within the manufacturing department. And if you see the different boxes on the screen, so you actually have the green boxes, which are processes, and the blue boxes are the data hierarchy that each of the systems manage, right? And they all come with their own definition, and therefore there needs to be an exchange of information between these systems. And I just wanted to share, let me just open up this. If you see, over the ages, like there have been many systems that have been put in place, right? So there's a proliferation of IT systems to manage this complexity. And in some cases, it's probably necessary because they may be doing electrical design, they may be doing mechanical design, and therefore they need different tools to ensure they use the best in class. And then we need to be able to like bring them back into one probably system of record, right, where we're managing all these different details. In such cases, we rely on those different formats and the ability of the systems to be open, so they can kind of like support a multi-CAD scenario. So that's some of the integration aspects over here. And as we kind of progress along, you'll see that obviously there's more and more information that is required, right? So we're not only managing the design, the digital twin, but then we're managing the part definition of how they are put together. Maybe there's some nuances of how, let's say, they're put together in the manufacturing side, right? So we may have to create different structures for that, and then create plan-specific information that can be work instructions, or for instance, in the service department, on how these products need to be assembled in the field or serviced once they're put into use. So there's a lot of deep information that needs to be captured and related to each other, right? That way it's seamless. And finally, communicated to all these other systems that are there. So I guess if I were to think about this complexity, right, obviously over the ages, there's a lot of technology that has been put in place. So that's where there's been a lot of digitization of the processes, right? Then what is different with the digital transformation? Digital transformation happens when you truly connect all of these processes end to end, right? There's a seamless information flow, and information is not or process or steps are not duplicated, or information is not required to be entered multiple times. Right? I can just remember there was one company where what we looked at was they were using Salesforce to get their order, and then they were using ServiceNow as a mechanism for their asset management and procurement process and all that, right? And none of these systems were connected, even though they were digitized. They were not connected, right? So they would receive an order in Salesforce. An email is sent to the procurement team. The procurement team creates, or the sales engineers create records both in Salesforce and ServiceNow, and they were having multiple touch points. There were arguments about information not being correct, right? And then data was being manually exported and reported using Excel and so forth, right? So you can clearly see with that how it can be painful, and it can slow down the process by itself. And what we're looking at doing here is seeing how we can better the information flow or automate the information flow between these systems, right? So that's where we can gain some efficiency. So that come back to, and we'll be exploring primarily the area of how PLM and ERP systems interact with each other. Okay. So before I do that, before going to, I have this small survey. So if you could actually enter and go to slido.com, enter this number, it will take you to this active poll, and I'll keep it open for another maybe 2 minutes. I wanted to get some idea of what systems do you all use. Great. One person has said Oracle Enterprise One. Yeah, thank you for interacting. I see some are using some of the major players like SAP, and others have Infor or PRMS. Some of the older tools that Infor actually has a newer SaaS one, but PRMS is an older ERP system. Okay, I'll just keep it open for another 30 seconds, and then I'll move to the next slide. All right, okay, let me move to the next slide here. So as we talked about, oftentimes when we have to integrate, right, there are many ways to look at this integration. I've talked to companies where they have, basically all they have is right now a CAD structure. So they're managing their CAD data. They have a CAD structure that's defined by their assembly and the top level assembly. And they probably directly want to go and integrate this with ERP, right? While you can do that, it kind of limits in your ability of what you can define in such a case, right? So what you see on the left-hand side are things where PLM obviously has matured, where it is able to actually help you define all your needs of that manufacturing planning, right? From a bill of material standpoint, and that can all be done from a CAD-centric way. So visually, you can see how you're assembling things together, and that makes it easier rather than just having to deal with naming and numbering conventions and location identifiers and on so forth, right? That can be cryptic. So if you see here, that's where one of these things within the Windchill system, they enable or allow you to actually define the overload and engineering bill of material with all the options and variants, and this can be done using the CAD model or the geometry itself, right? And then overlaying all the options that one can support, and also create the required variant specs of it, right? That basically the end customer, the businesses can order. In addition to it, it supports robust capabilities to transform that data to create all these different views. So you could have a manufacturing view of it, a costing BOM view of it, and so forth, right? And not only do that, but also extend it to create let's say the alternate BOM views, right? Oftentimes you'll have product sub-assemblies that sometimes are both made in-house and also procured from outside, right? So in such cases, you may want to have different BOMs, and depending on the scenario that you may have, you may need to push one of these BOMs actually downstream. right? Depending on your inventory situations, you may need to kind of like, so therefore there is a need to assemble these different views so that you can actually then properly interact with your downstream system, right? If you were to do this directly from CAD, then there's only a limited ability, right? You'll not be able to do this. Or if you were doing this with Excel, then imagine trying to manage 10,000 rows with all of these permutations in Excel, right? It's not probably meant for to support that. And of course, on the ERP side, that's what you're looking for, is the routings, some definition of, let's say, the item masters, the components that make it up and all that, right? So that's what you're wanting to receive from your upstream system. And obviously, there are, so this is the area where it allows you to kind of make all that definition and then be able to like support these needs to transmit this information, right? Now, if you ask what is the technology or what are the things that we use, obviously a lot of the technologies have evolved, right? Previously there would be API based integrations, then there were SOAP protocol based integration. Now the newer one is the REST based integration between these systems, right? And they all exchange information using one of these file formats, right? Either XML based messages or JSON based file formats actually to exchange information between the two systems. So these are protocols. In some cases there are standards as well that dictate how the XML should be put together, right? Or in some cases the system itself may dictate that. So these are the technologies that we do, and what are the patterns that we can use, right, to integrate between systems. So if we looked at that, we could kind of like distill this integration down to maybe 3 parts, right? So we just talked about what information has to be assembled upstream. Then we need to define what are the triggering events, right, for this information to be sent across, and is it being governed by some particular individual, right, or some administrator that can monitor and manage that communication. So these are items that we need to define. And then, of course, these two systems talk different languages. Therefore, that information, that message, or how you see it, needs to be transformed, right, from one syntax to another. So these are this is the second responsibility, and the third primary responsibility in this exchange is the consumer will need to acknowledge saying, yeah, I received the information. There were no errors in this transaction, and everything looks good. Right, I have seen like companies do even this acknowledgement manually today. When they're importing Excel files, they have to compare two systems and then finally send an email saying everything looks right. Right, that itself seems to take up a lot of time. So the area to look at is how do we automate that acknowledgement. Right, so these are the responsibilities or maybe the major tasks that need to happen. So if we thought about these buckets, then the two styles are the point-to-point integration, where you can think of point-to-point integration being where all the responsibility of the transformation, everything else, is either fully owned by the producer or fully owned on the other side, on the on the consumer side. The transform bucket and everything else is owned by either one of the ends. In such a case, then the producer needs to know fully well how information needs to be received, right, and needs to transform this for every consumer that it's interacting with, right. And this is where sometimes the cost of implementation can go up, right. The producer, sometimes OEMs may produce adapters that can do this exchange, or one has to write this transformation, right, and embed all that logic into the system itself. And that increases both implementation and maintenance cost. While this may be appropriate for certain situations, but it is a huge endeavor, right? And so, if this is one of the options, what's the other, right? The other style of integration would require like the use of some kind of middleware technology, right? And we'll look at some examples here. What this allows us to do is decouple the two systems, right? And then it allows you to have control over changing the consumer at any point if there were better systems, or keep adding other consumers, right? And the producer doesn't have to worry about what the consumer syntax is. It's going to define a particular syntax and only define and publish information based on that, right? And all that responsibility could be moved over to the central middleware, which will take on responsibility for translating the information necessary. So this will allow for some level of decoupling, and allow for some scalability as well, right? And then nowadays there are really good systems in between for this transformation that have pre-built integrations to many systems, right? Whether it be your HR system like Workday, beyond ERP itself, right? So if you want to find out what are the skills involved and need to communicate to that, then you can do that as well, right? And not only limited to this style of exchange. When we look at this middleware service, this is where we come down to what PTC has done, right? So within the PTC Windchill stack, what you'll find is there is a layer in between called the ERP connector. So it does all the work necessary to assemble information, right, about all the changes that are happening regarding your bill of material. So it's able to produce the details regarding what is the change that has happened, that is approved. Therefore, what are the parts that have been added, deleted, or updated, right? It is able to assemble that level of information. And it supports two types of payloads out of the box. It's able to push it to a file or send it to an email, right? So these are available to you out of the box, and maybe this is suitable for certain companies because all they want to do at this point is just integrate with a small ERP system, right? And this can be consumed either with some kind of scrubbing, right, or somebody importing this, or automating this process itself, right, of importing this information into the ERP system. So this greatly reduces the need for you to think about the logic and all that, and the ERP connector is fully sufficient to kind of like support a lot of the needs, right, as long as the information is properly structured in the upstream system. Another way of another path to look at this is a custom distribution target, right? And this is a technical term within the application. So these are probably systems to which you send the data, right? Think of distribution target as a place where you would send the data, and you could define what is the protocol that you want to use, right? So if you were using any of these newer ones like Azure iPaaS service, Dell Boomi, or Penta, or things like that, right? Or even software like Workato, UiPath, and all that, like RPA tools, then what you need is some kind of a triggering event, right? A REST-based call that these systems are able to consume and start the process, right, with all the payload, and then do the transformation and so forth. So there needs to be a way to trigger some workflow that is defined within this system, right? And then what we do is we have done projects with customers where we are able to like create this custom distribution target and support their need, right, to be able to publish to the middleware. And from here on, the customer takes on the responsibility for the downstream system to communicate with the or transform the information and communicate with the downstream system. So with that, why do all this, right? Like I've been talking about the importance of integration. So why do we need to do this, right? So if you hear from some, I just have one more survey here. If you could go there and like answer this question: is currently your PLM integrated with ERP? One of you have said no. Two said no. One has said yes. Thanks. I'll just keep it open for another 30 seconds and then we'll move on. Okay, so like I said, what is the value in doing so, right? You can hear from some of the customers that have actually done this integration, and what they did here was they had actually used the ERP connector and used a middleware process right in between for them to automate that exchange itself. So you can hear the key message here is they were able to obviously save time, avoid all the possible errors that occurred with their manual process, right? And this is consistent with what even Holger from Krug and Master had kind of like mentioned here, right? This saved them immense amount of time, and it's able to like help streamline this data transfer, and that's why we want to do it. It saves in that previous example, which I was telling you, that procurement within that company used to take like several months, not including like the production time, but just the fact that they had to align on what needs to be produced, right? That itself took several weeks, and they cut short by integrating. That became really straightforward and seamless, right? And they were able to reduce that from weeks to minutes, right? And how production could be kicked off. So that this is my last survey in this meeting. So if you could answer, like, are you currently looking or investigating ways to integrate your PLM? And two of you said yes. Just keep it open for another 30 seconds here. All right, great, thanks. So let me say, how do you want to approach this, right? So how to think about maturity? Like I mentioned earlier, some want to integrate directly with CAD, and others may say, I've received things like where they just want to deal with the ERP, like how to integrate with the system, right? While not fully reviewing or assessing their maturity in their process, right? So I think a proper integration starts from obviously understanding if you're doing not only just CAD bill of material, but also are doing part management, right? Full part and BOM management in the system. So I think that is key, so that you can kind of support all the different use cases that are required. So we help at PDSVISION. We come and help doing that assessment. If you have not yet enabled the part objects in Windchill, we can come and assist you with helping doing enabling the WT part management, right, within Windchill. Associate that with CAD so that you're able to create that representation. Then move to the next step, which would be transforming this BOM to support your manufacturing needs, right? Creating all the different scenarios that we talked about, creating business rules and things like that in the system. That way we can automate the BOM transformation. We also provide something under our umbrella called the My PDS QA app, right? Think of it as a quality check. So as these different processes are that you interact with, we can put in the checks and balances in the system as part of your change processes. That's how you want to release, or even the promotion. We can add business rules into it, which you cannot do natively out of the box, right? Even though there are business rules only work within change. They don't work outside. Whereas My PDS QA can be added to even promotion workflows, right? You can put in your checks and balance to make sure that if there's a particular set of compatibility of your parts that needs to be checked, then you can add those conditions and rules into the system. Right. Once you have that maturity, I think you'll be ready then to say, okay, I have the right data model. I'm also, even Windchill has kind of like evolved quite a bit actually in this area. So if you're not leveraging all the new functionality that is there, then you may be forcing yourself to look at customization scenarios when it comes down to integration, right? And you can avoid a lot of that by going back and inspecting if you've kind of like modeled your data actually in the right way within Windchill. And by the combination of ERP connector and my PDS, which is something that we've built from the 20 years of experience that we have, right? We built some connectors that help transform the information that we'll be able to like quickly reduce the implementation cost and so forth to be able to publish to all these downstream systems. So this is a way to kind of like think about how to address this thing, right? And where you need to start. And with that, let me just tell you a little bit about PDSVISION, right? So we are the largest global reseller for PTC. We do over 120 million euros in annual revenue. We are based out of Stockholm, but we operate out of 13 different countries. Like I said, we are the largest platinum reseller. We have about 440 employees, of which about 300, a lot of them are actually technical resources, right? So I myself, my name is Rajesh Pollapragada. I've been in the space for about 20 years. And 18 of those years I had actually worked with PTC, playing multiple roles, and I now assist PDSVISION with and our customers actually with looking at digital transformation and how to put let's say the right practices and technology in place. So we, like I said, we operate out of 13. Like you see here, we are in India, South Africa, a lot of the Eastern European countries. Then we have our offices in Texas and Ohio and so forth, right? So we are able to address your need at the location that you need, probably most needed. And that's my last slide here, and I want to open it up for some questions. Like I said, my name is Rajesh. It's just not me, but there are a lot of experts. We have a lot experts in the Creo talent who know how to use all the different modules within Creo, or experts who help with migration when you have a major acquisition and you need to merge systems and so forth. We can help with migrating data, content, right, and also with process consulting on how to enable all these different processes within the application, right, and improve your return on investment. So that this I'd like to hear from you to see your story. How are you looking at connecting? So please book a call with us. We'd like to hear more and how PDSVISION can help you. So with that, I'll just open it up in the last 10 minutes or so. If you had any questions, please type them in the Q&A, and I'll try to take them. Or if you have even topics that are of interest for the next webinar, please post them in the question or chat panel. So if there are no other questions, then thank you for attending. Like I mentioned, if you had other topics that you would like to see, please feel free to write to us. We'd like to do a few more just to show how to configure the out-of-the-box ERP connector. Maybe talk a little bit about doing your BOM transformation itself, and what are the new improvements that have been introduced with Windchill 3.0, right, to manage plant-specific data itself. So we're thinking about doing this. If that's of interest to you, please write to us, and then we'll make it happen. So there are no other questions. Then thank you for your time. Thank you for listening to us, and hope to see you on another webinar. Thank you.